Welcome to the Infowars Nightly News. I'm Melissa Melton. Here's what we have in store for you on this December 13th, 2012 edition.
Tonight, Harry Belafonte wants Obama's critics in gulags.
The only thing left for Barack Obama to do is to work like a third world dictator and just put all these guys in jail.
Then, a student documents every known U.S. drone strike within the last 10 years. Plus, breaking news from a JFK insider. All that and more up next on the Infowars Nightly News.
Tonight, I want to start with a special report that should scare any free-thinking Americans that are still left. Today, Harry Belafonte, social activist who's gone on record to say that he sympathizes with communist leader Fidel Castro, came out to say that anyone who opposes the agenda of Barack Obama should be rounded up and imprisoned. Let's take a look at this clip.
And I don't know what more they want. The only thing left for Barack Obama to do is to work like a third world dictator and just put all these guys in jail.
So there you have it, Belafonte going on record to say that anybody who disagrees with Barack Obama should be, quote, put in jail. They should work like a third world dictator and put all these guys in jail. Now, where did Belafonte get that idea from? It's not new. We've actually heard that before. If you'll recall, Bill Ayers, former Obama mentor and Weather Underground terrorist, actually went on record saying the same thing. Let's take a look at that clip.
I brought up the subject of what's going to happen after we take over the government. We become responsible then for administrating, 250 million people. The only thing that I could get was that they expected that the Cubans and the North Vietnamese and the Chinese and the Russians would all want to occupy different portions of the United States. They also believed that their immediate responsibility would be to protect against what they called the counter-revolution. And they felt that this counter-revolution could best be guarded against by creating and establishing re-education centers in the Southwest, where we would take all the people who needed to be re-educated into the new way of thinking and teach them how things were going to be. I ask, well, what is going to happen to those people that we can't re-educate, that are die-hard capitalists? And the reply was that they'd have to be eliminated. And when I pursued this further, they estimated that they would have to eliminate 25 million people in these re-education centers. And when I say eliminate, I mean kill. 25 million people. I want you to imagine sitting in a room with 25 people, most of which have graduate degrees from Columbia and other well-known educational centers, and hear them figuring out the logistics for the elimination of 25 million people. And they were dead serious.
So there you have former FBI agent Larry Grathwohl talking about how he infiltrated the Weather Underground, and that Bill Ayers and his associates were talking about how they would have to eliminate 25 million Americans who did not want to become communists. They were going to establish re-education centers in the Southwest, and if people refused to convert to communism, they would have to be eliminated. And the people who were not going to be eliminated, that were in these camps, would have to be re-educated into a new way of thinking. So where are these camps? Where are these people going to be re-educated at? Well, it's FEMA camps, actually. And Alex breaks this down really well in his film, Police State 4, Rise of FEMA. We're going to go to a clip from that now.
New legislation authorizes FEMA camps in the United States. And it says 6 major camps across the country with hundreds of sub-region camps. Now, if you watch my films and read the documents we put out, that's exactly what we said the camps are and how they operate, because we reverse engineered all this. The camps are already built. It's when they want to openly announce they're doing it that they then pass a law. And they say, oh, all these shut down military bases that they've been keeping refurbished and putting barbed wire facing in and putting in showers and bunks, and we knew that those were to be the FEMA camps. Because in the FEMA documents and the congressional leaks and from people that worked at the camps, we knew, and we would list the camps. Then we noticed when it was declassified in 97 that the very camps that had been, quote, decommissioned under the base closure, because they'd said back in the 80s under Rex 84 they were going to use the camps in Congress. So we said, you want to know where the camps are? They're old military bases, and they're old POW camps from Italians, Germans, and Japanese. Guess what's in here? Guess what's in the bill?
So the National Emergency Centers Act, or H.R. 645, actually mandates the establishment of national emergency centers to be located on military installations for the purpose of providing temporary housing, medical and humanitarian assistance in the event of an emergency or major disaster. But the bill also mentions that these camps can be used to meet other appropriate needs as determined by the Secretary of Homeland Security. They don't talk about what those other appropriate needs are. But these camps will double as command and control centers, and they will house a 24/7 operations watch center. And the bill contains language that authorizes these camps to be established within closed or already operating military bases throughout the country. And as we know, Halliburton subsidiary Kellogg Brown & Root was awarded a $400 million contract back in 2006 to construct detention and processing facilities for the Department of Homeland Security. Now, if you move on just a little bit further, the Army National Guard began advertising for internment specialists, internment and resettlement specialists that would ensure the smooth running of military confinement, correctional facilities, or detention and internment facilities. And some of the specific duties included counseling individual prisoners in rehabilitative programs. And under advanced responsibilities, you see there, it actually says, for the custody and control and operation of an enemy prisoner of war or civilian internee, and also to provide command control, staff planning, etc., for the operation of a displaced civilian resettlement facility. So they're talking about civilians here being interned in these camps. And it says here they're going to counsel individual prisoners in rehabilitative programs. Sounds a lot like re-education, doesn't it? And it also mentions Army Regulation 210-35, entitled Civilian Inmate Labor Program, which provides guidance for establishing and managing civilian inmate labor programs on Army installations and guidance on establishing prison camps on Army installations. So they all go hand in hand. Now, fast forward a little bit further to this year when Infowars reported on a leaked Army re-education camp manual. A shocking Army manual that described how political activists in prison camps will be indoctrinated by specially assigned psychological operations officers. And it goes through and talks about how PSYOP teams would use indoctrination programs to reduce or remove antagonistic attitudes, as well as targeting political activists with such indoctrination programs to provide an understanding and appreciation of U.S. policies and actions. That's a quote. And this manual here includes DHS, it includes ICE and FEMA. These are domestic operations, and it talks about civil support operations that it's going to be done within U.S. territory, and it talks about how U.S. citizens will be confined separately from detainees, specifically mentions that. And it also talks about the prisoner's social security number. Now, for people who argued that this document was only meant to be used in faraway countries like Afghanistan, Afghanistani people do not have social security numbers, neither do Iraqis. In fact, most countries do not call their national ID numbers a social security number. America is one of the few that actually does. In addition, the manual also states that the authority to approve resettlement such operations within U.S. territories would require, quote, a special exception to posse comitatus, which can be obtained via, quote, the president invoking his executive authority. So there you go. It's all laid out right there, FEMA camps. And then you also have all these other stories coming out as well, such as nullifiers should be shot and hanged. This was put up by People Against the NDAA. And basically, Florida State Senator Don Getz sent a letter to noted constitutionalist Chris Ann Hall advising her that he agrees with Andrew Jackson when he said, quote, shoot the first nullifier that touches the flag and hang the rest. Interestingly enough, here at Infowars, we couldn't find anywhere that actually attributed this quote to Andrew Jackson, and other people who have commented on this story also cannot seem to find that quote attributed to Andrew Jackson anywhere. But the truth is, we have the right to nullify unconstitutional legislation. And you hear all this death talk. They're using these death terms for anyone who doesn't want to get on the bandwagon with collectivism. And it's coming out more and more. Now, in this clip that we have coming up for you for Alex from his film Martial Law, he talks about how communism is basically just another globalist front. So let's take a look at that clip now.
We've been talking to a lot of the protesters, and most of them say Bush bad, Kerry good. The problem is Bush and Kerry are cousins, Kerry's for the war, and one of the few signs that we've seen that is exposing that both of them work for the same people and are part of a false choice is this communist revolution sign. But you know, I go back to 1958 when Eisenhower called Fidel Castro the Abraham Lincoln of Latin America. And so the problem is that it was actually the big central banks at the turn of the last century that created communism as a way to try to con the serfs back into serfdom. So again, another false choice is what we have here. Bush-Kerry equals more war. I agree. They're corporate fascists. It's all true. But then the corporate fascists have funded this as their counter-revolution control valve. This is the true complexity that we're facing. And until we figure that out, we're going to lose all our freedoms, and they're going to keep winning. How you doing, ma'am? Hey, I like the top part of your sign. I agree they're all controlled. Are you a communist?
Go away.
But it says communist revolution.
I really don't want to
stop bothering this lady. What are you worried about?
What am I? I'm not.
What did you say? I didn't hear you. How can you say that?
How can I say what?
Very nasty what you just said. Did you hear what he just said? Did you hear what this guy just said? He said something terribly nasty.
That stuff doesn't work.
You know, I don't know.
This isn't the 60s. Look, he's trying to agitate.
This is not going to happen.
This doesn't work, dude.
This is not the 60s. Don't happen anymore. We're living in the.
What I'm saying is,
I don't
saying.
know what you said, but I heard
Communism.
on the side.
Communism. You work for the U.S. government, don't you?
This guy said over here, this guy's nasty. Boy, he is nasty. You are nasty.
I'm nasty. I said that the communists work for the big banks.
Oh, the big banks. This man is from the big banks. He's from Chase Manhattan.
See this? He isn't interested in information. He's actually interested in putting out disinfo.
Chase Manhattan and Citibank. And Citibank and Chase Manhattan are part of capitalism.
You see, ladies and gentlemen, this is the communists for you. All disinfo, all propaganda.
It's all part of capitalism. It's all part of capitalism, isn't it? You're a capitalist. You're a capitalist. You're a capitalist.
The U.S. government admits they put Mao in.
Capitalist.
U.S. government admits they put Mao in.
Capitalist. You're a capitalist, are you? How much money do you have on you if you're a capitalist? Free markets? What does that mean?
You're capitalist masters.
What does a free market mean?
How long have you been a communist?
What's a free market? How long have you been a person? How long have you been a jerk? Right. How long have you been a jerk? How long have you been a jerk? How long have you been a jerk? How long have you been a jerk?
Do what, me?
Grow up.
Who should?
You should. Oh, grow up.
No, I'm trying to find out. I agree with the top.
Trying to find anything. I'm trying to be a disruptive jerk. Why don't you grow up and get out of here, please?
Bush-Kerry equals more war. I agree with that.
Thank you. Good.
But what I'm saying is that the communists were actually at the beginning funded by the same people. It's all consolidation. That's all I'm saying.
Good. Thank you.
So you guys don't care about facts. It's all just disinfo.
Good. Thank you. Yeah. Sounds good to me. Thanks.
So you don't care that Stalin killed 50 million people?
So, yeah. So go ahead. So what else?
So you don't care?
So who are you? Who did you kill? How many people did you kill?
No one.
But your ideas killed millions and millions and millions. Capitalism.
No.
You're a capitalist. You're a pro-capitalist.
That's for blood, right?
She wishes we were dead right there.
This is the one?
She's the one walking around saying she wishes we were dead.
So you don't care?
So who are you? Who did you kill? How many people did you kill?
No one.
But your ideas killed millions and millions and millions.
So what happens to you after you go to these FEMA camps? Is it just a fun little vacation? Well, actually, let's take a look at this article that came out in The Guardian today. CIA tortured and sodomized terror suspect, Human Rights Court rules. Apparently, CIA agents tortured a German citizen, sodomizing, shackling, and beating him. They seized him in Macedonia in December 2003, and he was handed over to a CIA rendition team and secretly flown to Afghanistan. And if anything, that should ring true to you. It should sound a lot like the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, which says you can be whisked away without charge or trial, possibly tortured, no due process whatsoever. Sounds a lot like that, and they actually ruled that that is torture. So there you have it. you know, you have people like Harry Belafonte coming out making these claims, and some people can dismiss that and laugh it off, but it's all here in black and white. The government has planned that entire thing out about imprisoning anyone who's a political dissident, anyone who disagrees with the continuity of government, with the president. And so it's all right there, and it's pretty concerning, and I urge everybody to go take a look at these documents at Infowars.com. Moving on, switching gears, visualizing the illegal drone bombardment. Tweeting every known U.S. strike takes student over 12 hours. Apparently, NYU student Josh Begley opened the Twitter account @DroneStream with the idea that he was going to tweet every known U.S. drone strike within the last 10 years. And he thought this would only take him about 10 minutes, but 12 hours later, he was still tweeting, and he was only up to 2010, which, as you probably know, is when our drone strikes actually picked up. So this is the same guy who was originally going to do an iPhone app, an Apple app for iPhones that was going to show the location of every drone strike, but Apple turned that down on 3 separate occasions, saying that it was, quote, objectionable or had crude content. Well, I think it's pretty objectionable that we are illegally drone striking other countries as well. Basically, there have been 3,000 individuals who have been killed, at least, in these drone strikes. A lot of them have been innocent civilians. And even though we see stories on drone strikes of suspected militants all the time, and we've got the New York Times coming out with an expose on President Obama's drone strike kill list even, our White House has yet to recognize or even admit that this is happening. And all the time you see in the media these stories about suspected militants. Since when are we killing suspected people? These people have had no due process, no public charges or trials. We're just bombing them. And the White House won't even come out and admit that it's happening. It's pretty horrifying, actually. And speaking on drones, this actually came out this week in RT. Next generation U.S. drone now equipped with death ray laser. You can't even make this up. This is not Star Trek or Star Wars. This is real life. Next generation of military drones unveiled by a leading U.S. manufacturer will not just carry a limited supply of rockets, but will likely be fitted with an ultralight laser with an unlimited magazine. And this is a HELADS program, which stands for High Energy Liquid Laser Area Defense System. They got $60 million from DARPA to put this out, and it's apparently in its final development stage. And a key application will be putting this on drones. So that's wonderful. And moving on to technology that's going to be turned against us in horrifying ways, let's look at this Mike Adams article from Natural News. Electroshock torture handcuffs now patented. Apparently, a U.S. patent has been uncovered that describes electronic handcuffs capable of delivering torturous electroshocks, gas injections, and injectable chemical restraints to the prisoners that wear them. These cuffs can be remotely used, remotely controlled, and they can be combined with RFID to deliver proximity electroshocks. And apparently, it's brought to you by the same company that manufactures S&M sex toys. So that's wonderful. I'm sure if the TSA gets their hands on these handcuffs, flying will be fun in a whole new way. RFID, it came out as a useful technology. They show you, they talk about how convenient this is going to be. It's going to make paying for things easier. And it's just so convenient and great. And then all these technologies just like that, they turn around and they're used against us. It's pretty scary, actually. So I have to ask, did that last story make you feel anything? Did you have any anger or anxiety at the thought of that? Well, apparently also from Mike Adams, every human emotion you have now is classified as a mental disorder in the new psychiatric manual DSM-5. Sadness, grief, anxiety, frustration, impatience, excitement, all of it, it's now a mental disorder. And Mike goes on to talk about how this is basically quack science, and it's a bunch of self-important, overpaid intellectuals who just want to make money inventing fabricated diseases that you need to rush out and get an SSRI on. So we all need to be taking these serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which basically make you feel numb. They mess with the chemicals in your brain. And so there you go now. Every single thing is a mental disorder. Any feelings you have, you're basically crazy. Now, switching gears, we're going to talk a little bit about vaccines in a mini special report here. Apparently, this week, the New Zealand government has come out to say that every pregnant woman in the country can now get their hands on a free whooping cough vaccination. And according to Health Minister Tony Ryall, international research shows the most effective way to protect babies before they are immunized is to vaccinate the mother during pregnancy. Well, yeah, how would you vaccinate a baby that isn't even born yet? So that antibodies are supposedly passed on to the baby. Now, they say that infants under 6 months of age should not get some of these vaccinations. Most nationally recognized health organizations say that. But yet somehow it's totally fine to give these vaccinations to infants who have, or to fetuses rather, that haven't even been born yet. So you've got all these chemicals, you've got heavy metals, you've got formaldehyde. It's pretty interesting how they tell you not to smoke because smoking causes cancer because cigarettes has formaldehyde in them, and yet it's totally fine to shoot up pregnant women with things that have formaldehyde in it, to give that to small babies. It's pretty disgusting, and if it makes you sick, it makes me sick too, but don't rush out and get a vaccination. Actually, interesting enough on this whooping cough thing, Mike Adams put out another report. Vaccine failure admitted. Whooping cough outbreaks are higher among children who are already vaccinated. And this was actually a study led by Dr. David Witt of the infectious disease area there at Kaiser Permanente Medical Center, and he expected to see that the unvaccinated children were the ones winding up with whooping cough, but what he actually found was that these outbreaks were higher among the vaccinated children. And the same article went ahead to talk about how these vaccines have never been tested for long-term effectiveness. GlaxoSmithKline has never studied the duration of the vaccine's protection. And the doctors also went ahead to admit that even though it doesn't provide lasting protection, they should still go ahead and get it. And Mike breaks this down. He says, let me get this straight. Whooping cough infections are more common among already vaccinated children. These vaccines have never been tested for long-term efficacy. And the doctors are even admitting they don't provide lasting protection, but doctors and government authorities say you should go ahead and get those anyway. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever in any kind of realm of logic. But moving on from that, this we came across today, and we were all pretty horrified. 30 years of secret official transcripts show the UK government experts cover up vaccine hazards to sell more vaccines and harm your kids. And this was a doctor who was doing investigative medical research and found 30 years of secret transcripts showing that the UK government vaccine committees and the supposedly independent medical experts that they had were deliberately concealing information from parents for the sole purpose of getting them to comply with the official vaccination schedule, and that they'd been doing it for 30 years. And the doctor goes on to say that JCVI made continuous efforts to withhold critical data on severe adverse reactions to both parents and health practitioners, and that some of the committee members had extensive ties to the pharmaceutical companies, big surprise there, and that JCVI frequently cooperated with vaccine manufacturers on strategies aimed at boosting vaccine uptake. And what they found from these 30 years of transcripts is basically a bunch of horrifying information that I'm going to go over real quick here. Instead of reacting appropriately by re-examining existing vaccination policies, when safety concerns were identified, the JCVI either took no action or selectively skewed or removed unfavorable data. They significantly restricted vaccination criteria to increase rates. They made amendments to their data sheets. They also relied on methodologically dubious studies. They categorically downplayed safety concerns and overflated benefits. They promoted and elaborated a plan for introducing new vaccinations of questionable efficacy, discouraged research, and deliberately took advantage of patients' trust and lack of relevant knowledge on vaccinations to promote a scientifically unsupported immunization program that could put children at risk. Now, while this is going on in the UK, if you think that doesn't happen here, all you really need to do is take a look at the revolving door that basically is our CDC and our big pharma companies. It's pretty horrifying. And once again, it's enough to make anybody sick, but don't rush out and get that vaccination. Now, moving on, we're going to go to the quote of the day. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. And that's from John F. Kennedy. And a lot of people believe that this speech is one of the speeches that led to him getting assassinated, in addition to the fact that he wanted to put the Federal Reserve out of business. Now, that's about it for this portion of the news podcast. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at an interview between Darrin McBreen and Judyth Vary Baker on the evidence of assassination squads, actually. So stick around, and we will be right back.
Recently, the Harvard School of Health looked at more than a dozen scientific studies concerning fluoride and confirmed what countless other scientists have been documenting for decades. Sodium fluoride in the body reduces IQ and increases cancers. You see, the aluminum industry and the fertilizer industries would have to pay to store all the toxic waste they produce. But instead, they get our counties and cities to pay to put the poison in our water. It's not just fluoride we're getting, but lead, mercury, arsenic, the list goes on. And a lot of this toxic waste comes from China. Unfortunately, fluoride and its derivatives are only one of hundreds of toxins being added to our drinking water. We're battling the globalist on so many fronts. Health is an area where we can all take control of our lives, and it all starts with that basic building block of water. It is time to purify our family's water. The ProPure filtration system with added fluoride filters is the best system from my research to protect you and your family. Infowarsstore.com already has the lowest prices on ProPure water filtration. But until December 10th, we are going to offer 15% off the already lowest price. I know what I'm giving my family this Christmas. ProPure. Go to Infowarsstore.com and get 15% off the already lowest price out there with the code WATER15. WATER15, and you get 15% off at Infowarsstore.com. Alex Jones here with a message that could revolutionize health in this country. Going back about a year and a half ago, I began to learn about the incredible health effects of longevity products. Aaron Dykes lost 92 pounds. We're going to show you some before and afters. Aaron, break down what happened, your story.
I've worked really hard with diet and exercise to try to lose weight, but I just didn't get the results. It just didn't happen. Then I saw what you were doing with InfoWarsTeam.com. I wasn't even trying to lose weight, but I got it because I wanted to feel better energy. I wanted that nutrition. Didn't even understand how that could kickstart my own weight loss goals, but the products did that for me. I found myself suddenly losing weight, more energetic, wanting to exercise, wanting to eat the right foods.
And they don't even advertise it as weight loss. I want to challenge our radio listeners to go to InfoWarsTeam.com. Sign up as a distributor and get wholesale pricing discounts at InfoWarsTeam.com.
We are back, and we're now going to go to an interview between Darrin McBreen and Judyth Vary Baker, Lee Harvey Oswald's love interest. They're going to talk about his last days. Very interesting interview, so stick around.
Let's talk about the night before the assassination. Murchison hosted a high-level gathering at his house in Dallas. Lots of people. Tell us about the people that were there and what.
Well, wait a minute. Well, I can tell you something that's more personal because, of course, someone else reported that. Lee told me about a meeting where they said they were going to make a trophy film that was held at Turtle Creek the day before that. You know, that high-level meeting that LBJ's mistress was talking about, they really were announcing what they were going to do, but the plans to decide to actually go ahead in Dallas apparently were made on Wednesday night, the night before. And we have meetings also going on even in New Orleans at that time, and a lot of correlation going on. So
now, were some of the people that were at the Murchison house the night before, were some of the same people? Because we have the night before, we have H.L. Hunt,
yes.
J. Edgar Hoover was there, Nixon was there, LBJ was there, Clyde Tolson, who was John McCloy was there.
Well, from what Lee described some of this, because he said there had been a meeting. After all, when we spoke, it was quite late on Wednesday, and it was going into Thursday, only 37 and a half hours before the assassination. And Lee is telling me about, I did not hear the name Hunt. Not that Hunt. The CIA's Hunt is the name that I suspect I had heard. I say that because he gave me a number of names. The ones that he told me to remember are the ones that I kept close to me, and that was, of course, Bobby Baker and Billy Celestes. He said not that they were involved, but because of them, there was a go-ahead and kill Kennedy in Dallas, and this apparently had been in the works for some time.
And that's because of the Bobby Baker and the Billy Celestes scandals that were going on.
An enormous scandal. That would have put, you have Lyndon Johnson deciding whether he wants to go to prison or become the most powerful man in the world.
Yeah, because, I mean, he was probably even going to get dropped from the re-election. He might have even been dropped from vice presidency because these scandals were heating up to the point where it looked like that's the only way he was going to save his ass from going to prison. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, you had actually the meeting where they were showing that suitcases full of money were being brought in, you know, as bribes. That meeting was held, the Congressional Investigation Committee looking into this corruption was held the same day Kennedy was shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, and by the way, one of the first things that Lyndon Johnson did, he said he called his broker right after the assassination. He's not saying, oh, poor Kennedy. He's saying, sell that goddamn Halliburton stock that my wife has got. Because he wants to start the Vietnam War, and you can't have that connection, you know.
True.
The point is that I'd like to get across is that Lee Oswald was grieved by what he was hearing. He pretended he was invited into this ring. When I told Jim Mars about in 1999 that Lee, he intimated that he had saved Kennedy's life 3 weeks earlier, several weeks earlier, the way he put it. And I said, you mean you saved Kennedy? And he said, I believe I did. Now, when I said that in 1999, it was extremely hard for anybody to believe. But in 2000, in the mid-2000s, 2007 or so, we have Abraham Bolden, and he came out, he was a Secret Service agent, and he said that Kennedy's life indeed was saved in Chicago. They arrested armed gunmen there, and you find that Kennedy his trip there was called off at the last moment. You can find the more details in JFK and the Unspeakable, that wonderful book by James Douglas showing treasonous activities by Kennedy's own generals and so on, and much motive for killing Kennedy and blaming it on the innocent Oswald. Also,
and these were with
that Lee Oswald, he didn't say Oswald, he said the man's name who uncovered this plot and informed the the FBI there, so they arrested these men, his name was Lee.
Yeah, and he said that's the informant that told him about it. Yeah, because I think it's fascinating. In fact, I'm holding The Echo from Daily Plaza. This is a book by Abraham Bolden, and he was, one of the Secret Service agents.
We hope that we'll be speaking together in Chicago.
Oh, that'd be a fascinating conversation. And the thing is, he was a Secret Service agent, and they were starting to hear rumors of an assassination squad.
Yes, sir.
And then it sounds like maybe Lee Harvey Oswald may have tipped him off, and then that the group was put under surveillance, but the CIA blew their cover when I guess there was an intercom or a radio or something that one of the guys that they were surveilling overheard this. They blew their cover. They heard a radio or something.
If we think this is an accident,
Yeah,
right.
But that's the thing, is when they finally pulled this guy over, they did arrest somebody, and one of the suspects was, and one of them was an ex-Marine with ties to anti-Castro Cubans. And
same sort of patsy setup.
His name was Thomas Arthur Valley. Yeah, but
here's another thing that a lot of people may not know. When Jim Mars first interviewed me, and Jim is on top of everything, I want to tell you. And this wonderful investigator, this researcher, did some wonderful things because he actually started working with me and looking at all my evidence, and he was just astonished. And then as he was looking at all this, and we're talking about hours and hours and hours, all of a sudden I said, well, Lee told me that he was a member of an abort team. And Jim just about fell off his chair. He said, what? He said, that's not in any of the literature. It's just not there. He had just recently interviewed Tosh Plumley, a CIA pilot, and apparently others. This abort team existed. Nobody knew about it, and here I'm telling him about it. Something else, too, I'd like to tell you. In 2003, you hear me speaking about the Kennedy assassination. Lee called it the big event. And so I call it the big event there in 2003. Well, we don't hear St. John, you know, his, we have all of a sudden we have.
It was the deathbed confession, and that's exactly what Howard Hunt was saying, the big event. He calls
it the big event, and yeah, I called it that in 2003.
Sturridge and Morales and people of that ilk stayed in apartment houses during the preparations for the big event. Their addresses were very subject to change, so that where a fellow like Morales had been one day, you're not necessarily associated with that same address the following day. In short, it was a very mobile experience. Let me point out at this point that if I had wanted to fictionalize what went on in Miami and elsewhere during the run-up for the big event, I would have done so. But I don't want any unreality to tinge this particular story, or the information, I should say. I was a bench warmer on it, and I had a reputation for honesty. I think it's essential to refocus on what this information that I've been providing you, and you alone, by the way, consists of. What is important in the story is that we've backtracked the chain of command up through Cordmeyer and laying the doings at the doorstep of LBJ. He, in my opinion, had an almost maniacal urge to become president. He regarded JFK as he was, in fact, an obstacle to achieving that. He could have waited for JFK to finish out his term and then undoubtedly a second term. So that would have put the LBJ at the head of a long list of people who were waiting.
Well, see, these are the things that, because I'll be honest, I was very skeptical when I first heard about your book. And, well, for sure. And then I started reading it. And then these are the types of things that just kept, as they kept pouring in, they made more and more sense. The more of these dots that were connected, certainly seems more and more believable. I'm curious, is after JFK gets shot, then you must have been horrified when you witnessed Lee Harvey Oswald being shot right there on television.
God. It was awful.
I can imagine. And then and not only that, but the years to follow, when a different Lee Harvey Oswald than the rest of the world knows, but his family was disgraced, his friends, neighbors, everybody thinks he's just this monster, and you know better. Yeah.
We've seen some internet polls. The people who are, the internet has made things different. I've been able to speak out on the internet, and we're doing polls, and we're finding now that 5% of the people we're polling, and of course they're on Facebook and everything, they're now not only not saying that Lee Oswald was just a patsy and was not involved, they're saying he tried to save the president. You see, more and more people are understanding exactly how these dots are linked together. If you go to Amazon.com, of course, you can get the book at meandlee.com, but at Amazon, you're going to find 72 out of 82 reviews. 72 are 5-star reviews, and they're all over and over. They say, finally, the dots are connected. Finally, we understand what Lee was about. And that's what I want to convey. This was an innocent man, and I'm sick of what's happened to our government. I'm sick of the wars and the corruption that's occurred. We had a really great country. Lee Oswald died for that country.
Yeah, I was going to say, not only that, he's a patriotic American and a hero.
Yes, sir.
And
God bless you. Yes.
Now, what about this? Do you have any idea what happened in the days before the assassination? I understand that Lee tried to communicate with the FBI. And,
yes, he did.
Yeah, what happened there?
Well, we know that I'm convinced, since Lee told me, he said, I believe I saved Kennedy's life, you know, and Kennedy lives 3 more weeks, you know. He said he was going to try to do the same thing in Dallas. He didn't know how he would be able to do so because they had sort of caught him. I mean, in other words, by informing the FBI at least once, that's probably saved Kennedy's life. Originally, I thought that had to be Miami because Kennedy came in there by helicopter, you know, instead of motorcade. I didn't know which city. Lee Oswald was not a man to brag. He would never exaggerate or anything like that. He was a man of few words unless you could get him really going, and sometimes you get passionate. Well, anyway, Lee gave me so much information, and so I'm convinced that he could put on a different persona. He really believed in the beginning that when he was apparently penetrating these rings, and it started in New Orleans. The whole thing started there because you have this mafia connection, and the CIA and the FBI, they're cooperating with many other interests, and some of these, of course, like the World Bank. You have McCloy, after all, a member of the Warren Commission. He is former president of the World Bank. Kennedy was, as you know, printing real money.
That's right.
So you have so many reasons why people would cover this up. Lee said, I'm a dead man. And I said, please, Lee, get out of there. You know, run, leave. And he said if he did, 2 things would happen. One, we'd all be killed, and they'd catch him, and they'd kill him anyway. And he said, if I stay, that will be 1 less bullet aimed at Kennedy. Because if he would have left, they would have put someone in there willing to shoot Kennedy anyway.
When did you start fearing for your life? I mean, I would imagine right away, but then you're starting to see people that you know and that are affiliated with the JFK assassination in any way. They start disappearing. Yeah.
Yes, one after the other. I was so fortunate that see, Dave called me Jay, and Jay could be J-A-Y, like a guy's name, you know. People didn't know that Dave Vary had anything to do with females, and that helped me a lot. Also, my name is Jay Vary, and it's close to Dave Vary if you're not listening carefully. So you have these similarities. But then I was Mrs. Robert Allison Baker III in Florida. I did not go to my sister's wedding because I didn't want to be associated with the word Vary. Vary is a very, uncommon name. I didn't go to my own grandpa's funeral. I loved him dearly. I didn't go, I stayed out of the papers as much as I could.
Well, you also gave up on your passion.
Everything.
I mean, this was your God-given talent was to do what you were doing with medical research.
I wanted to cure cancer to this day. In fact, sometimes I'm offered, there's hope that I may be able to help guide some laboratory research and bacteriophage research. That's what I'm interested in. Looking for virus cures for cancer.
Oh, I would love to see you get back into the profession and doing what you do.
I'm able to do it. To this day, I'm able to do it.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, I really want to stress this, is that people are, as they learn about the cancer industry, we realize that we could have cured cancer a long time ago. It wasn't profitable. Imagine if we cure cancer, we're going to have whole hospitals go down. Okay, because if you do it with a vaccine, you're going to get an injection. You're not going to get cancer anymore. You're going to have millions of people out of work. Insurance companies they're going to lose all that money. Pharmaceutical companies are going to lose all that chemotherapy income. You know, from all as long as you are burning cancer, poisoning cancer, and cutting cancer out, you are back there in the medieval ages. Okay, we're in the Middle Ages.
Oh, absolutely. Now they're giving us cancer through the vaccinations and flu shots and all that sort of thing. So they're
you can count on it, and that's the sad part. And yes, I've had my life threatened. I want to tell you, I've been in the hospital 7 times between 1999 and 2007. I was forced overseas. I've been out of a wheelchair twice. I can't see very well anymore. I've had 4 concussions. These people they don't play games. You know, they're serious. The problem is that they have to make it look like it's an accident, and I've bounced back. Geico sure doesn't like me because they've had to pay for all these so-called accidents, you know. And here's the problem. If I stayed silent, and that's what I was going to do, I wrote a book and I was going to give it to my son and take it to my grave. I just couldn't do it. When I saw, despite the huge amount of evidence that Lee Oswald was an innocent man, every year they're coming out with these stupid specials, you know, you know, he did it. I've told others, but I think it's very important to stress something. You can't trust what you see in the 26 volumes. And, for example, Hoover said, do we have enough time? Can I?
No, I know what you're getting into. Absolutely. Yeah. What Hoover said as soon as JFK was assassinated. He said Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone assassin. Look no further. Look no further.
Before they even got the evidence from into the labs. Yeah. But he also said that Lee was a homosexual. The humiliation they put him through, the way he was handled, it's outrageous.
And none of his testimony, none of his interrogation was recorded.
Of course not.
Yeah. The most.
And he could not say, this is important, he could not say, hey, look, I was working for the CIA, I was working for the FBI, I was trying to say, we would have all been killed. But imagine all the contacts that he had over 2.5 years in Russia, in the USSR. There were CIA over there, there were informants. They would have executed them. This is the height of the Cold War. You know, these people knew that Lee would not betray us.
Did you know anything about Sparky Rubenstein?
Oh, sure. I met him. I met him personally.
Yeah.
In fact, I met a number of these people personally. And often they say, "Oh, this was what he did was a spontaneous act because his dog was left in the car, Sheba." What they don't tell you is that, and you'll see it. By the way, Oliver Stone has a very good film there with JFK. It shows Sparky Rubenstein, that is Jack Ruby, walking with his 2 dogs, Sheba and her mate, under his arms. You can see it in a clip from the movie. Now, you only have 1 dog in the car. And Dave Vary talked to me after the assassination. He told me I had to keep my head down, be a vanilla girl. And by the way, because I objected to using prisoners who were uninformed that they were being injected with cancerous material that could kill them, I was kicked out of the project. And that's why it probably saved my life, because I had to go back to Florida. By then, Lee and I were in love, and we were trying to figure out a way to get back together. Lee left his wedding ring behind, you know, the day of the assassination. But he was wearing his Marine ring. It says, always faithful, Semper Fi. Now, there's 1 dog in Jack Ruby's car, Sheba, just 1. Jack Ruby's other dog is not there. And what Dave Vary told me is that they had kidnapped the other dog, okay? Because he got information, underground information that you're never going to hear from the FBI, okay? They kidnapped the dog, and Dave Vary said that they were going to chop the dog and torture it to death. And that whatever they did to the dog, they would next do to his sister Eva, and then they would go after him. That they'd cut all his fingers and toes off, and you know, joint by joint, they'd disjoint him and cut him to pieces, just whatever they did to the dog. So when you see this 1 dog in the car there, that shows you that just a hint of the pressure that Jack Ruby was under. He was so relieved when they found out, when he was told that Lee Oswald had been murdered and had died, you know, after what he did.